Sup fam, welcome to the MrsReddit channel. I'm your host, Karen Monroe. Today we have some stories about really entitled people, where a Karen gets punched in the face. Working as a young bouncer. Back when I just turned 18, I decided to earn some money while still in school. There was a pub in my town that I'd always went to on the weekends. In Germany, you're allowed to drink beer and go to bars at 16 or 17 years old. I started working there about 2 weeks after my birthday as a busboy, collecting dirty glasses and cleaning them, stocking the bar, etc. This pub opened their doors at 7 p.m., but the 40-ish-year-old bouncer wouldn't get there until 9 p.m. The first 2 hours, it was the duty of the busboys to check IDs and make sure nobody under the age of 16 entered. At midnight, we would help the bouncer kick out all the minors still inside the pub. Oh boy, I don't know how many times I had to tell the customers that I actually worked there. We didn't have a dress code, so I was usually working in jeans or shorts and some kind of band t-shirt. The most entitled people I encountered were teens who just turned 16 to 18 years old. Their attitude was always, "How dare you ask me for my ID? Can't you just see I turned 16? But one of the most amusing encounters I had was after 3 years of working there. We always had people trying to get inside by showing us their student ID. We're not allowed to accept these as they're pretty easy to fake, or people just give their younger friends their ID. On to the story. The cast. Me, as me. Teenage girl. Friends of teenage girl. It was a night like any other. I was standing outside smoking a cigarette while casually checking IDs of new customers. A group of around 5 teenagers show up. Me. "Hey there, can I see your IDs, please?" Teenage girl. "What? We're here every weekend and we have never shown our IDs." Friends of teenage girl. "Yeah, we're regulars here." Me. "I've been working here almost every Friday for 3 years and I've never seen you. And besides, it is the law that we have to check IDs as minors are not allowed inside." Teenage girl. "Well, do you even work here? Are you a real bouncer? I've never seen you before. Can you show me your bouncer ID?" I don't know exactly what she wanted to see. We don't have anything like that. Me. "Sorry, I don't have anything like that. I'm only checking IDs until 9 p.m. until Harry, the actual bouncer, shows up." After some back and forth, they finally showed me their IDs. All of the friends had valid IDs, but the one girl showed me her student ID. Usually I would say, "Sorry, but unless you can show me an official ID, I can't let you in." But this time was different. This was the first time a random customer I didn't know handed me an ID from someone that I actually do know. I looked at her student ID and immediately recognized the name and picture of a friend of mine. Me. "Oh my gosh, Chrissy, I didn't realize it was you at first. Dang, you've changed since 2 weeks ago." Teenage girl. "Wait, what?" Me. "Yeah, don't you remember? We went to random place with random people and ate pizza?" Teenage girl is silent. Her face started turning a deep red. Then she just says, "Never mind," and tries to snap the ID back from my hands. I'm not giving it to her and say, "Okay, listen, it's a felony to use someone else's ID. You can actually get arrested for that. You can call Chrissy now and hand the phone to me so I can confirm you didn't steal her ID. After that, you're free to go, but never try coming here again unless you're old enough to enter." The teenage girl calls my friend and I talk to her. I tell her not to lend her ID to minors anymore, and that's that. I kept the ID to get it back to Chrissy, and the group went somewhere else. Okay, so fun fact, I used to wait tables, so I've seen some pretty funny stuff. One guy tried to use his prison ID to order a drink, and yeah, that didn't fly with my manager. I've seen the student ID trick too. Like, who do they think is going to accept that? You blew your interview. This happened back in 2010 or 2011. I can't remember for sure. I was working for my father-in-law making cabinets, desks, wardrobes, and all the like. All custom made. We were short-staffed and were looking to hire a couple of more people. At the start of every interview, I always said the same thing to everyone. "This interview is being recorded. The boss will go over every interview, and if you are hired, the boss will either call or send an email by the end of the week." I had done at least 4 interviews that went pretty well, and 2 of them were exactly what we were looking for. Then, in comes the star of the show, our entitled idiot. I stood up to make the introductions and shake his hand when he picked up a photo of my sister-in-law, who is only 14, and said, "That is a hottie. If I had half a chance, I would be all over that. Wouldn't you?" I went back to my side of the desk and invited him to sit without answering said question, and started the interview the same as all the others, with my speech about how the entire interview was recorded and such. He actually looked and said, "You know I didn't mean anything by what I said." That is when I broke the news to him that I'm the boss's son-in-law, and that is my 14-year-old sister-in-law, and that I'm sure he will hear from my boss. He hightailed it out of there. My father-in-law knew he couldn't press any charges, but he forwarded the guy's resume to all the other cabinet makers and told them what he said. This just prevented him from getting a job in that field within at least a 100-kilometer radius. I never did see him again. I wonder what he ended up doing. He did have a great resume and probably would have gotten the job because of it. Too bad his mouth got in the way. I will never understand why some men assume all men think the same way. Not every man is interested in engaging in a conversation about how hot he thinks another person is. Even so, why would you pick up a random picture on a desk and say that at an interview? Isn't it pretty obvious they will know the person in the picture? That's just so cringy. Roommate feels entitled to my stuff because he pays for my UI and welfare benefits. Long story short, my roommate is a piece of work that I've been stuck with for less than a year. He talks non-stop about how great he is, while being critical and judgmental of everyone else, especially me. Honestly, I think he hoped we would start dating after moving in together, but I quickly grew to dislike him after moving in. It was never romantic. He had a medical emergency and needed short-term help, and we both needed a place to live. Now he's just angry and passive-aggressive towards me. Let's start with the fact that he makes $45 an hour. I know this because he brings it up all the time. He's a boomer, so everyone who isn't achieving massive success by just working 9 to 5 is lazy, entitled, mentally ill, or addicted to drugs. You know, people society should just abandon because they aren't working as hard as him. That's a subject he also makes a point of bringing up almost daily because I'm on unemployment and have been working on building a nonprofit that he also tries really hard to undermine my efforts at. Because, of course, I'm just a lazy and entitled drain on society. I'm an autistic single parent of 2 autistic teens with extra needs. So basically, I'm a welfare mom who works twice as hard just to keep afloat while raising my kids. Since moving in, he's been using my low income status to take advantage of free internet, free charging for his electric car, free pet care while he's been out of town every weekend and weeks at a time for work, plus helping himself to the free food that comes in the kids' school meals from the food bank. Now he's packing up his dishes from the kitchen, and I can see he's been taking my dishes too, ones that I bought from a thrift store. He is trying so hard to punish me in any way possible. I can't imagine why he's still single. Jeez, people really suck, OP. I'm sorry you are having to deal with your jerk roommate on top of everything else going on. Honestly, he sounds just like the kind of people he says he despises. Like, why you gotta mooch off of people going through a rough time when you clearly have the means to not? I hope for your sake he moves out and things get better for you. Entitled parent stops women on crutches getting an elevator. I've always wondered if I'd ever see something awful enough to post on here, and this happened a couple of weeks ago. So I, 20 male, was in Primark at the time, which is a well-known clothing outlet in the UK for people who can't afford to fork out money on big clothing brands. I was wandering around the men's section on the second floor, where there is a busy escalator on one side of the shop and an elevator on the other. As I got closer to the elevator, I heard raised voices and went over to look because I'm nosy. There was a white woman in her mid-20s standing in the open elevator. She had a child in a stroller with her. Let's call her Karen. In the doorway of the elevator was an older black woman around 50 who clearly had an issue with her leg and was using crutches and one of those boots they use for stuff like broken legs. Let's call her Jane. With Jane was a younger black man, maybe in his late 20s, but I'm not sure he said anything during the entire encounter. I'm only making race relevant because I'm not entirely sure Karen's actions weren't free of prejudice. So Karen was in the elevator with her stroller angled to stop Jane from getting into the elevator, which is definitely big enough for more than 3 people and a stroller. In a raised voice, she was telling Jane, "I'm claustrophobic. I can't have anyone in the elevator with me." Jane was asking if Karen would please just let her into the very big elevator so she didn't have to wait for it to go and come back. Karen wasn't having it and just kept repeating the "I'm claustrophobic" line over and over and told Jane to use the escalator instead. Jane gestured towards her leg and crutches and asked whether Karen did this in all elevators because there was no way she could get away with doing that every time someone got in an elevator with her. Jane started calling Karen out on this. Karen's story quickly changed to, "With everything going on, I'm worried about getting COVID." She said this without having a mask on to a woman wearing a mask while standing in an extremely busy store. By this point, it would have been quicker for them to go down and send the elevator back up one at a time. Karen started shouting, "How do I know you don't have COVID?" And Jane just responded with a very calm, "How do I know you don't have COVID?" So Karen yelled, "How do I know your leg is actually broken?" Weird turn, lady. By this point, there was about 10 people, including me, pretending to look through the clothes racks while we all stared at what was going on. It's rude to stare, so you have to be polite when watching the drama. Finally, about 3 different staff members appeared, about 5 minutes after the commotion started, and they asked the women to take 2 separate elevator trips. They let Karen go down first because she was already in the elevator. Shame. I heard Jane saying to Karen as she left and to the other staff members, "This is how it's going to be for a long time. She needs to get used to it." I imagine she was referring to COVID and sharing spaces again. I wish something more was done, but people go off so much around here that you kind of just want them to get what they want and leave ASAP. Everyone went back to their shopping after the women were split up, but I remember making eye contact with a maybe 16-year-old boy who was also watching, and we just burst out laughing in the middle of the store. Not all that exciting, but I got a huge laugh out of it for a few days. Just when I think there could be another Karen story, she shows up full force. Seriously, what is wrong with people? It really does amuse me how much time and effort these Karens waste by feeling they're entitled to do whatever they want. When is it gonna end? Before our last story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Idiot Karen grabs a teenager and gets punched hard. Last week, I went to my local Safeway to do some grocery shopping. As usual, I parked and walked into the entrance, grabbed a cart, and went inside. I had no issues until I heard the shrill, loud, obnoxious voice of a Karen yelling at someone. Better them than me, I thought, until I heard someone yell back, "Let go of me, crazy lady!" I rolled my eyes, but decided to go in that direction to see what was going on. I got to the aisle just in time to see a Karen. Yes, she looked every bit the meme of a Karen. The Karen yelled at the girl whose arm she had a hold of. "Karen, don't you dare ignore me!" as she thrust a list at the girl. "Get me what I need, now!" The girl yelled again, "Let go of me! I don't work here!" "Stop lying and go get me my groceries now!" Karen yelled. The girl suddenly punched the Karen square in the mouth and yelled, "I said let go of me and that I don't work here." Karen was knocked back a few steps and dramatically flopped down on the floor, now screaming, "Assault! Call the police!" mixing, "I want you fired!" with other nonsense. The girl stood there absolutely fuming. "Grab me again and I will hit you harder than that, you crusty old lady." By then, a literal wave of employees rolled into the aisle to find out what was going on. Several of them got between where Karen lay writhing dramatically on the floor and where the girl stood. The police showed up shortly after and separated the two. One police officer spoke to the Karen, while the other spoke to the girl. I was asked if I had been involved. I told the officer no, but I did witness what had happened. The officer asked me to stick around to give a statement to the police. The Karen kept up her writhing while demanding that the girl be arrested and fired. One of the officers pulled aside an employee and went off somewhere for about 10 minutes before they came back to jerk the Karen off the floor. He had her cuffed within seconds. As it turns out, this was not the first time this Karen had harassed shoppers demanding their service at this Safeway. As I later found out, Karen wasn't supposed to be in the store to begin with, as she had previously been banned. So I ended up having a good day. I got to see a Karen hauled off in cuffs. I don't know what happened to the girl or Karen after that. The girl seemed fine, but the Karen was dragged out, swearing the entire way. I say dragged because she refused to walk. I want that girl fired! I want you fired! I want your manager fired!
Ma'am, you're under arrest, ma'am!
I will fight you! I gave my statement to the officer and went about my shopping. I later found out Karen was swearing and cussing up a storm at the station and decided to try and fight some police officers. She wound up getting herself confined to a control chair, spit mask and all. Honestly, it's kind of one of my dreams to witness an encounter like this. Like, I wouldn't want someone innocent to get hurt, but seeing a Karen get arrested when they deserve it must be so satisfying. I know a few people from my old serving job who I would have loved to see taken away in handcuffs. That's all for today. See you soon.